really just kind of introduced you to coding some general things, how I go reading the sentences and I'm defining the codes. But here I want to talk about the code titles. And so how do I identify the code titles? So again, just to kind of recap, the way that I code is I put my buckets here, and my buckets are determined by my research questions. So I have anxiety, communication, executive functioning, and the future of AI. Those are all my research questions. And then I have the general AI usage and the in vivo codes, and those are the extra areas. General AI usage was my research question. Future of AI was because of implications and things that I would want to make for the future. And then in vivo codes are those codes that are in someone's words that are really, really powerful. So I like to code with these buckets. They're called parent codes. And so as I'm reading my document, if it doesn't fit into one of these buckets, it doesn't get coded. And again, that's just because I'm an extremely curious person. So now the question becomes, where am I getting those fun code titles from? And so let's continue coding, and over the next few codes, I'm going to kind of basically narrate why I'm coding the phrases that I'm coding and what the title is that I'm utilizing. So if we look here, we're continuing this paragraph, and so I've asked for a specific example where they had to explain to ChatGPT, and they were trying to articulate things. And so she's basically responding a little bit about what she does and in her classroom. And so she's giving me some background here on her student, and this is why I have the buckets, because this is not important to anything that I'm coding right now. So it doesn't belong in my buckets. So I'm actually going to skip down to this. And so I see the sentences like, so what I'll do. So she's basically describing here what she does and what is happening here. So what I'll do is I'll put it into ChatGPT. I'll talk about the personality of the child. And then she's kind of giving the explicit example. And so the challenge here is figuring out where this code ends, because this is all one example, and this is all kind of has multiple layers to it. So because it is all an example, and specifically it's an example of how she's using ChatGPT to write written comments to students in report cards and things, or to work with the student. So it's definitely related to communication. So I'm going to put this in my communication bucket, but I'm also recognizing that there's additional layers to this code. So this is her kind of using this to communicate and to get on the level with someone. And so she's using it to basically come up with a more polished version of it. So because this is specific to ChatGPT, I'm going to code it as ChatGPT. And actually, I don't know why it dehighlighted that. So let me just go back in. So this is definitely a ChatGPT because it's using ChatGPT. She's talking about drafting a project progress report. So that's the task that she's doing in the example. And again, like I'm just trying to boil this down into like hashtags. So think about it. If you had posted something like this on LinkedIn or Twitter, what would you hashtag it? Well, you're going to hashtag it the name of the tool. So you're going to say ChatGPT. If I'm looking at this specifically, she's using it to draft a progress report. And she's using it as a support to her own communication. So it's not crafting the full communication independent of her. It is supporting her in writing that polished professional version. And so these would kind of be what I would see as the hashtags. And I'm wearing my researcher hat right now, and I'm thinking about my research and the importance of getting the tool. Anytime they give me an example, I want to know what the tool is. I want to know what they did with it. And then I want to know how does it fit into the scheme of my bucket. And so here it's really just communication support. And then the description is really just for me to kind of connect the dots. So I've come up with these hashtags, but in a month when I might be doing these transcriptions and trying to find the things and the trends, I may not remember this stuff. And so this is not a memo, but this is the opportunity to really just give some more specific information of what has been done to jog my memory. And so, again, this is for me later. So she uses it. She mentioned like a polished version of it, which is why I left as tone definement. And then I obviously misspelled this. And she definitely seems to be using it for articulation and trying to be specific with things. So that's going to be my code here for boiling down. Now, what's interesting is this is one of the instances where we have multiple codes happening, because she's also talking about putting the basics in and having ChatGPT come up with this more professional piece. So she's giving it the starting point, and it's giving her the finishing point. So to me, that has an element of being a thought partner and an executive functioning piece. So I feel like I need to double code this section to just show like how is she utilizing this as a thought partner? How is she utilizing it to specifically speak to the fact that it is used for her executive functioning? And so I would put child. So I think like the information for executive functioning, I don't think I want to capture what's happening with a specific child. I want to capture more of she's putting in the basics and then ChatGPT is coming up with it, because again, that's more executive functioning than communication. So I think that that's really just the last piece. And know that I'm coding this live with you, so you're fully getting my thought processes as I'm narrating this, because that's just kind of what's going on. So if I kind of boil this down, again, the tool is important to me as a researcher because we are exploring the different tools that people use with ChatGPT, or Grammarly or Magic School and those types of things. And then if I think about this for me, as I'm thinking that she's kind of describing what's happening and looking for it to help her write it's almost like scaffolding. So it's like the AI itself is scaffolding how she would go from what happened to the actual progress note for the student. So to me, that's a scaffolding thing, and it's not supporting this section of it is speaking to that executive functioning support. So it's what she lived, what she was involved with the child, what she saw, and then how do I take that description and move that into a progress note. So it's executive functioning support to me in that way. So again, I have to remember all these decisions. I want to say yeah, the situation to me is unstructured that she's describing. So there's no like hierarchy, there's no cause effect, there's no even initial component of that progress note. So I think that's really mentally demanding from how do I go from this specific behavior to that. So that's why I'm putting the mentally demanding part in it. And again, I'm thinking about her specifically. So she's said that she struggles with fully articulating things, which is why I said communication planning and organizational burden, because I think this is also connecting back to the idea that she has trouble articulating things. And so that's going to add my code in over there. Then let's see. I also feel like just seeing if there's anything else in this paragraph. I think this right here is also speaking to an element of executive functioning again, because this is how she puts it into ChatGPT. And she's describing, like, she's just giving it the basics of what has happened and she's working with it. So I think that this is also related to executive functioning in the sense that this is what she inputs. So she's inputting the general description and she's looking for it to help her move it to a specific type of output. So again, tool is important. I want to put the child code needs to have the tool in it. And the child code is just popping up add child code because it's going into those buckets, and it calls those buckets that I created the parent codes. And what I'm interested in here is it's related to exactly what she's inputting. So she's not giving it a like elaborate prompt. She's literally just giving this general description of what happens. And she's also giving it like minimal details. So she's not giving it a play by play of what's happening. She's just giving it that high level information. And so that's what I want to capture, is that AI usage for this individual, it doesn't have to be terribly structured. It doesn't have to be something that she's taken a class on. She's just really giving it raw information. And so I think that that's important to capture because, again, we're in this exploratory how do people with dyslexia, autism, and selective mutism use AI? And so I think it's really important to capture this. And I see it really as she's giving it the general input. She's offloading that cognitive load of it. And she's also relying on the AI to really structure that progress note. And she's also looking for it to formalize messy or underdeveloped thoughts. So again, I think she's just kind of, and what I mean by messy and underdeveloped is just there's not an elaborate prompt, there's not a level of specificity to it. She's just really looking that the AI will take it and run with it. And then yesterday I was writing one. And I'm just seeing if there's any other nuggets that I want to grab here. So if I think about this, I kind of want to code this again because I've coded it in general. But I think there's also an element here of overlap because there's emotional nuance going into this with this child, because this child struggles with flexibility. So even though he is, this situation she's describing, I've talked about this as a general input. I've talked about this as those components. But now I'm trying to think about the input that she puts in and how this input is, how she's basically giving it this nuance component because he struggles with flexibility. So I'm kind of thinking that she is giving it an additional nugget here because she's giving it the emotional nuance without even realizing it. So in the communication, even though it's not an elaborate prompt, I can see that she is telling it some of that nuance that he struggles with flexibility. So I think it's important to capture that the student is, she's describing the behavior of the student, which is giving ChatGPT some emotional nuance that it doesn't have in the situation. So I do think that that is important to highlight because as I'm thinking about it as a communication tool, she is telling it some of the nuance that it can't pick up on because it's a machine at the end of the day. So I think that's an important thing to capture with it. So she is helping it frame nuanced behavioral information. So I do think that that is important to kind of capture, is that she's not just describing the scenario. I'm kind of digging down into the fact that she is getting some of the emotional nuance that I don't think she's even realizing is happening here. And so I think I'm pretty happy with that. As I've coded this, I think I've captured the fact that she's giving it emotional nuance. I've captured the fact that she's using it to go from a general description into something polished, so that's speaking to executive functioning. I've caught those types of things. I've put those specific hashtags in of what she's got, so I'm ready to move on to the next section. And so that kind of gives you some insight into, as I'm creating those specific hashtags, as I call them at the beginning. Hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you've also realized that even though I did not ask her an executive functioning question, I'm still coding things as executive functioning because I'm definitely asking her about communication, but what she is answering to me is coming into play with that aspect.